the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside episode 379 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan in the heart of enemy territory, downtown Toronto, alongside Brandon Piller up in Collingwood. And on today's show, we've got Jacob Barker from Dobber Prospects for a full recap of the Senators offseason. We wanted to get another take on it, and he came with some fire. He also gave us a prospect to keep our eye on for next year's draft, just saying he plays the exact style that the Sens went with this year. So fun conversation coming up with Jacob. We also have Auston Matthews on the NHL cover again, and Scott Wheeler did his 2018 redraft. We've been hard on Scott for his evaluations of Sens prospects, so we'll let you know where Brady Tkachuk re-ranks, and is JBD left off the list? All that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day. Today is Friday, August 20th, and Pilsy, I'm not going to get NHL 22.
Just straight boycott, eh?
Not doing it. It's enough.
Here's the thing. Why? Like, if they could explain why Auston Matthews needs to be on the cover again after only 1 year in between, then maybe I would hear them out. But there's so many other marketable players that should have had a chance to be on the cover. Not that that's like, maybe it's not as the same high honor as being on the Madden cover or something like that, but it's still a big deal because all hockey guys get into playing NHL on Xbox or PlayStation. And like, for them to do Auston Matthews again it seems like a cop-out. Like the marketing team just decided to take the year off.
Yeah, it seems that way. Although he is a marketable American star playing on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I get all that. But there's 300 players in the National Hockey League. There's 300 players. So you got to think there's got to be someone else that they could do. But that being said, Spin Zone, there's only been I'm looking at it right now. Only 2 of the last 15 cover athletes have made it past the first round of the playoffs that year. How's that for a little je ne sais quoi to having Auston Matthews again? So Patrick Kane in 2010 won the Stanley Cup that year. Beyond that, only Vladimir Tarasenko made it out of the first round, and he was on the cover of NHL 2017. So, I mean, and when you're getting to Tarasenko, don't get me wrong, good player, but you're not necessarily only taking the biggest and brightest stars on the cover. And this is a same cover that's never had Evgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby, or the list goes on and on. There's so much talent out there in the National Hockey League. It just seems like a missed opportunity to shine the light a different direction. Nathan McKinnon, Leon Draisaitl. There's so many guys, and it just seems like, how about Victor Hedman, a 2-time reigning Stanley Cup champion, Nikita Kucherov, all these guys on Tampa Bay Lightning. Shouldn't they be celebrated for going back-to-back?
No, I think you mentioned it. It's a shame. Like, how has Sidney Crosby not been on the cover of one of these games? That is absolutely ridiculous. Like, they should have, like, they went Ovechkin last year. Why not follow it up with Crosby this year? I think that would have been perfect.
Ovi was also a 2-time cover athlete. We got to give him that. But he won a cup in between.
When was he the cover of another?
He was 07. He was the first.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, that's when it was still on PSP. That was the last PSP version. I actually totally forgot about that. So yeah, double athlete there as well. But that was like over a span of like a decade, not 2 seasons.
Yeah, even more. It was 14 years. But Pillsy, goalie-friendly show. Can we get some Tendy love on the cover?
Brodeur was the last one, right?
Brodeur 2014. And then you have to go all the way back to the OG. Now, you talk about what console. This was Nintendo console. John Van Beesbrook on the cover of 97, the year after that improbable Florida Panthers run to the Stanley Cup final. But, hey, whatever. It's a video game, and it's probably going to be the same game it's been for the last 5 years straight. Update the rosters and call it a day. But it's just kind of like, again, man, come on.
What was the first cover of the first NHL game you got? Mine sticks in my head.
Mine was Van Beesbrook.
That was your first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was Pronger, and I got it on PS1. What a game! Oh my god! I'm pretty sure that was that 99 or 2000.
2000, but are we sure it wasn't? He was on the cover of NHL Hits too. That was a sick game.
They need to bring that back, or at least have that as part of the game modes in the newest NHL, because Hits was sick.
They're just waiting for Tyler Clevin to make it to the league, and then they're gonna have
or Boucher
right up there. Exactly. Hey, speaking of those two guys, we got into all of the offseason with Jacob Barker. So what do you say we get to that sooner rather than later? And on the other side, we'll discuss Scott Wheeler. Another rankings. Look out. So we'll discuss Scott Wheeler did his 2018 redraft, and I don't think Sens fans will be too upset where Brady Tkachuk lands on that list. At least I would bet on that. But when I want to bet on sports or any sorts of wagers, I go to betonline.ag. The NFL season is right around the corner. Why not fine-tune your wagering on preseason action? You can find that this weekend at betonline.ag. And hey, NHL futures are out as well if you want to sprinkle a little bit on the Sens making a push for the playoffs. But the bottom line is that you're in the action, and to get our welcome bonus, all you have to do is follow these simple instructions. So on your mobile device or your website desktop, just head over to betonline.ag. There, you can create a free account, and when you do, use our promo code LOCKEDON. It's very simple. Promo code Locked On for 50% off on a welcome bonus. So guess what? You put in $200, bingo, bango, bongo, $100 immediately right into your account. You put in 100, that's 50 free play dollars right there for you. Now you have to bet it to win it, to earn it, but that's okay because you're in the action. So don't sit on the sidelines. Go to betonline.ag and don't forget the promo code Locked On to receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, here he is from Dobber Prospects, Jacob Barker. All right, we're now very pleased to welcome a special guest to the show. It's from Dobber Prospects. You know, our best friend of the show comes from there, and now he's handing over the reins. It's Jacob Barker, covering the Ottawa Senators. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Ross?
Fantastic, man. It's great to have you on the show. We've been going back and forth on Twitter for a while now, and great timing. You just put out your 32 and 32, where Dobber's taking a look at each and every team across the National Hockey League. What was your main takeaway from writing this article?
Well, it was an interesting one for sure, just kind of looking at the Ottawa offseason, because as you're all pretty aware, it's been relatively quiet. There's always been rumblings of Ottawa's going to go acquire a top six forward. Ottawa's going to get this big guy. Ottawa's going to be in on something. And it just really hasn't happened, even with our RFAs, like nothing. We've heard nothing on the front with Tkachuk or Batherson. And it's all just kind of been a waiting game. We're just waiting for one thing to drop right now. And it just hasn't happened. So I waited a long time to finally submit my article, because I'm like, I can't submit this early, because and like, knowing me, I'm going to submit it, then Tkachuk's going to resign, and then it's going to be outdated already. So I'm waiting, and I ended up just going with it at the last minute. I was like, I can't wait any longer. It looks like Dorian's going to wait this one out for a bit, so I can't. But it was a fun article to write. I think there's a lot that happened, at least, that kind of speaks to what the Sens are trying to do as an organization, just was playing that physical, tough style of hockey. I said at the beginning of my article, but every move that we made seems to be done with a purpose. And this purpose is to play this annoying, gritty, physical style of hockey that every single team is just going to hate playing against for 82 games, let alone if they have to see it in a playoff series. So I think that's the fun part of the offseason, just kind of piecing together how this team is actually going to look. But we're still waiting for a few big pieces or big dominoes to fall here, at least hopefully before training camp.
Yeah, we can definitely appreciate the nervousness of putting content out and then having it being outdated immediately. We're very used to that.
Never happens to us, man.
We've done re-records. We've had to throw full hour episodes in the garbage. So we feel your pain there, Jacob. Now, my question to you is, what do you think the next move is going to be? Like, do you think it's going to come at an RFA re-signing, or do you think it's going to be external? Like, how do you think what will trigger what? You know what I mean? Like, is a Tkachuk extension going to trigger some other offseason moves, or are some other offseason moves going to happen in waiting for the Tkachuk extension?
It's kind of tough. I've been pondering that for sure over the past week or so. I'm like, because they've been pretty open with the fact that they are going to try to acquire another top 6 forward. So I would lean towards Tkachuk and Batherson getting re-signed prior to what we see happening with that movement. But that being said, like, the rumors are spreading. I don't want to spread too much, but like, the rumors are spreading that Tkachuk is just waiting to figure out whether like we're going to be able to spend money in the future in order to re-sign long-term. So I feel like Tkachuk's just waiting until he figures that out from Melnyk, and who knows on Melnyk's deadlines, whether that's going to end up being right before training camp, whether that's going to be in the next week or so. So I'm still leaning towards that happening first. And then I think once Tkachuk happens, Batherson will happen almost immediately. I think those are going to happen pretty quickly to each other. And then from there on, I just don't know what the market is. They might be waiting to see what happens with Eichel right now. Like, Eichel's the big fish. I saw his tweet yesterday, his little eye roll, which is hilarious. I think that's a funny one to see.
He's a man of few words, that's for sure.
And you can tell he is not happy right now in his current scenario. So I think they're probably waiting. Like, that's the one thing that's kind of holding the market back right now, seeing what Eichel's doing, what he's going for. If we're involved in something similar with that, I've heard the name Ryan Strome get thrown around a lot for us. Was it Max Domi was the other one that was getting tossed around with Ottawa? Like, guys like that maybe don't have the same price tag as Eichel, but can play inside the top 6, complementary role. So I'm going to say that Tkachuk and Batherson are going to fall first, but that could also age pretty poorly if we end up grabbing a top 6 before that.
Well, the rumors are with Andrei Svechnikov that he's about to agree to an 8-year deal, but we've seen a lot of reluctance for RFAs to go that full term. And what's, I think, giving a lot of Sens fans solace is it's not just Brady Tkachuk that needs a new contract. You look around the National Hockey League, especially out west in Vancouver, where they need to sign their 2 best players in Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes right now. And then Kirill Kaprizov, the reigning Rookie of the Year. He still needs a contract. So there are a lot of moving parts. I think we discussed last week, Pilsy, the top 4 picks in that 2018 draft: Dahlin, Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, and Tkachuk, all unsigned right now. How many of those guys do you think make it to camp without a contract, Jacob? Because you got to think at some point, yeah, holdout's great and all, but it's going to affect the team at the second they step on the ice.
100%. I would be surprised if any of them made it to training camp without a contract. I feel like they're eventually, it's the same deal. It's like once with RFAs, you see it often, right? Like, there's no rush with these contracts. The rights are owned. You know, they're not actually going anywhere. An offer sheet's not happening. Like, you know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of negotiating the correct deal. And most of the time it's either negotiating whether you're staying long-term or whether you're going to sign some sort of bridge, either keep your RFA status or sign it right to your UFA opportunity and then leave for the open market. So I find I'd say, like, once one goes, the others will start to fall as well. Like it happened last year with all those guys that were RFAs, and I would likely see the same. But yeah, it definitely is a little more nerve-wracking as Sens fans, I find, just because of almost the lack of trust in ownership to actually do it. You just start to feel a little bit nervous. I remember the Mark Stone time when we were wondering whether he's going to re-sign or if he's going. And like, as much as Brady Tkachuk will be an Ottawa Senator to start the year, same with Drake Batherson, it just gets you a little on edge to just know like what's going to end up happening. Like, you see like, oh, Brady Tkachuk signed for 3 years or 4 years. It's like, oh, that's not good. Like, that's not what we'd want to see, because you know that that's probably not going to turn out well for us at the end. But if he signs his 8 year then, or 7 or whatever he ends up signing, then I think our nerves will go down a lot. But it's all up in the air with that. And yeah, I think the dominoes are going to start to fall pretty quickly with the RFAs, especially with training camp just right around the corner.
Yeah, and especially with how important these RFAs to their team. Like, not only are they important on the ice, but all of these guys are kind of like their team's identity, like up and coming identity. So it would just be so bizarre for them not to be on the ice at training camp. Now, you talked about it with Batherson and Brady Tkachuk with their extensions. Do you think they will get long-term deals done, or are you more inclined to believe that Brady and or Batherson will sign bridge deals here?
I would ideally have Brady Tkachuk long-term. Batherson, I understand maybe a little bit of a shorter term one from his perspective and from an Ottawa perspective. I've heard rumors of him going 3-4 years, almost like a prove it contract, and then he can make more money is basically it. So Batherson, again, he's like, we all know he's legit. He's a great player. He's inside the top 6 and he's a big piece of our core. But if he wants to get paid a lot, then he'd probably have to take a shorter term deal and then hope to make big money in a few years after he has a bit of a larger sample size in the NHL. Tkachuk's earned a long-term deal already, just with not even just his on-ice production, but just off-ice. He's got to be captain. Like, it's got to happen eventually. So like he's earned it, and I think it's important to lock him up long-term. But yeah, Drake, again, ideally, I'd be looking at something around the 3-4 year term where he's able, if I'm him, I'm looking for something 3 to 4 years, $6 million, like around something good. And then if you do well, the nice prove it contract, you're going to make a lot of money in your next one. That's your big money deal. And then if not, then that's it. You'll probably be around that for the rest of your life then at that point.
Well, let's hope he sticks with all the other Nova Scotia talent, where it seems like you look at Marchand, and McKinnon, to Crosby, just guys who have always been on team-friendly contracts and guys who haven't been scared to sign with terms. So maybe if you can bump that up to 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, just from watching him in Belleville, Pilsy and I being in the arena for 40 of his games down there, and he is just electric. The power to his game, I think, sometimes goes a little, unnoticed because he brings so much else with his playmaking and finishing ability. But his drive to the net and first in on forecheck can't be undervalued when you're looking at what he brings to a top 6 in the NHL going forward at the ripe age of 23 right now. Seems like a great time to, maybe buy a few extra years at a lower cost than when he does inevitably explode at this upcoming season or next. I mean, you don't want to put too much pressure on the guy, but it seemed like whatever line he was on was the line that was clicking. He had great chemistry with Stützle, but then when he was put up with Tkachuk and Norris, he fit in seamlessly there. So you need those guys that can play wherever in the lineup, and between him and Connor Brown, that right side really has a few of those. Now, the forwards, it seems like they're going to run it back to how they finished up after the trade deadline, but there were a couple additions on the back end. I should say Dadonov out. That opens up one roster spot up front. Is it Logan Brown's to take? Who knows? But on the back end, they did bring in a couple bodies, Nick Holden and Michael Del Zotto. How do you see the decor shaking out going into next season?
I think it definitely adds some depth to our back line, which can very much be used. I think Shabbat, we saw it last year, played way too much. For his time, he was the only defenseman most of the time, especially before they started playing Brannstrom and Zub on a consistent basis. But I think it definitely adds to a little bit more stability on the back end. So I think Del Zotto, they do value as a top 4 defenseman, whether he will step up to the plate or not. It looks like he'll start the season out behind Shabbat on that second pairing. And then Nick Holden's just a classic Senators DJ Smith hockey player. That's going to play physical, defensive player, reliable on the back line. He was healthy, scratched a few times in Vegas, but we're also talking about Vegas. Like, it's a lot of depth on that team. I think Holden will take his opportunity in Ottawa really well, and I think he slots onto that third pairing if we need. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Holden in the press box every now and then, especially with Victor Mete playing fantastic in Ottawa. Since he came over on waivers from Montreal, which is still a joke to me. When I saw that he got put on waivers in the first place, I said, we got to take him. And we did. And that was the first time, I think, in a while I was like, oh, wow, we did something that like Sens Twitter was advocating for right off the bat. So that was awesome to see. So I think it adds a depth because we know really quickly, like, one guy gets hurt and all of a sudden we're looking slim, right? So at least having the guy that we can rely on to play minutes if Shabbat goes down, or even if like Del Zotto has to miss some time, anyone has to miss time for any reason, we have other guys who can fill in and be reliable at the NHL level. So I do really like those additions. I think the right side's solid. I think Zaitsev, Zub are that top 4 to start. I'd like to see Bernard Docker get some opportunities this year. Again, maybe not full time. Like, I'd like to see him play most of the season in the AHL because he did look pretty uncomfortable in the NHL last year in his limited sample size, to be fair. But I'd like to see him get some opportunities, and then we'll see what ends up happening with that. Like, expectations for the year are a little bit all over the place. But if we're getting better, if we're on a slow incline, I think we'll take that. But the back line should still be solid, and Jake Sanderson should be playing for us in April, so that'll help as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're looking at the roster, the back end looks a little bit more promising than the forward core right now, just with the way things are shaping up. But one guy you didn't mention there, which I'm curious to get your opinion on, is Erik Brannstrom. Like, this is such an interesting time in his career. Like, do you think he's going to start the year in Belleville or with the NHL team, or how do you think that's going to work? Just because we talked about it on our show, with all these guys up front, like if you're going to send a guy down, everyone's going to need waivers except for Erik Brannstrom. So that makes him a movable guy. But at the same time, like, this guy doesn't have much more to prove in Belleville. Like, he needs to be in the NHL. But then you run into another problem where DJ Smith doesn't like having two small, undersized, puck-moving defensemen in his decor. So how does Brannstrom fit in all this jumbled nonsense on the back end there?
Brannstrom is really, really challenging for me when I look, because I really like his game, and I feel almost like we need him to turn out as a franchise because of what we gave up to get him, like losing Mark Stone and that. I think even at the peak of Brandstrom's play, I still think that losing Mark Stone, I get it. He wanted out. He's going to go to Vegas. I understand you get the best return that you get with that, but like losing a guy like Mark Stone's always going to hurt. So when you look at Brannstrom, I still think he can be a star, and he could very well have a massive breakout season this year if given the opportunity. But I just don't, like, we've seen it before. He just doesn't look like a DJ Smith guy. He doesn't, like, DJ Smith just doesn't like him. He doesn't want to play him on the off wing, which is where, or on his off side, which is where he wants to play, or he has played before. It just seems like a struggle between coaching staff and Brannstrom. And like, if he's in the lineup, he's on the left behind Shabbat. And if he's not, like, if he can't play there, he's not playing. It seems to be the problem that we have here. And he hasn't really gotten an opportunity to do anything otherwise. Like, we haven't been creative with him. It's not like we're trying our hardest it's not like the coaching staff is trying their hardest to find a way to get him into the lineup. It's, you're in this situation, and if you're not here, you're not playing. So in that case, like, I'd rather him play in Belleville than be in the press box. But at the same time, he's more than proven it in Belleville. Like, that's just game time at this point, where he's just going to rack up points. He doesn't belong in Belleville anymore. He needs to be at the big club. But I left him out just because I'm personally not convinced that he's going to be a Senator come the start of this year. You've heard the rumblings. He's like more. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the piece going back in the top 6 acquisition for a forward. I don't want that to happen. I think that would be a waste of an asset, especially because he didn't ever really get an opportunity to do much with Ottawa. But if he's not, I'll be happy. I want to see him get his opportunity here in Ottawa. And I just don't think we've put him in a position yet to know what we're actually getting for him to succeed.
Yeah, for a long enough sample size, right? He had his best hockey playing with Artem Zub in the top 4. Before that, his most common partners were Ron Hainsey and Erik Brannstrom. So what are you really learning about this kid when you're putting him with 2 guys who are not mobile, to say the least? So to have him with a guy who he's comfortable with, it makes no sense to me why he wouldn't start the year beside. Like, this is the perfect year to do it, because as of next year, it's going to be like that verbal meme here, but with Toy Story, where they get rid of the old toy and they look at the new one. When Jake Sanderson turns pro, Erik Brannstrom's going to be in the rearview mirror for a lot of Sens fans, saying those minutes that we were really hounding the coaching staff for to give Brannstrom, now you want Jake Sanderson getting those. So right now, it's the perfect year to see what you have in Erik Brannstrom. But not only that, but you have an open spot in the top 4. If you are going to trade him, why not showcase him beside your most reliable defensive defenseman? So from that standpoint, I'm not sure, because Pierre Dorion has been on record as saying he loves Erik Brannstrom, but then they turn around and give DJ Smith a contract extension, which was earned in my opinion, but then you're kind of caught in the middle of what's going on. So the franchise, a very, very curious storyline that we're going to follow throughout training camp that opens in less than a month. But if we rewind about a month, It's the NHL draft. And also in your 32 and 32, you went over each and every one of the Senators picks. I'm sure Pilsy will ask you to dive into each one, but my question is just your general overview now that you've had time to settle, looking back at what the Sens hauled in July.
Yeah, it was, I feel like I say this word a lot when I describe the Sens offseason, but it was incredibly on brand for what you think Ottawa was going to do at a draft. Incredibly on brand. Like, you knew they were going to reach from the beginning. You knew it wasn't going to be a player in the range. I had different ideas in mind at 10. I did not anticipate Tyler Boucher being picked at 10. Although I did anticipate Tyler Boucher getting picked at 37 with Ottawa. I thought that was a lock. Like, when I talk about it, I've been critical, not of Boucher as a player, of the fit of the value at 10. It's more like that's just my personal drafting value perspective with that. I love Tyler Boucher, and in my opinion, the fit in this organization offsets the value lost at that pick. So I still think it's going to work. Like, it can work out. The problem is it's a bit risky for me to do this. So yeah, he's absolutely a guy that's going to fit with this current core of Ottawa Senators, and I'm super excited to watch his development over the next couple of years because he's relentless. We've seen it. We saw him at the at the summer showcase. He is just exactly like, you watch him play, it's like, this is an Ottawa Senator player, like, just physical, in your face. Like, yeah, he'll do some stupid things over the ice and probably end up in the box a few times, but there's some skill there too. He's a solid player. It still has a long way to go with his puck skills. Overall, there's still a lot of room for growth, but we're drafting with the intention of these players growing. We're not drafting a finished product with Tyler Boucher. So I think he can complement this core really well, but where the risk comes in is if this core undergoes any sort of change, like a Brady Tkachuk departure or any sort of organizational restructure within this. Now, all of a sudden, we've drafted an asset that fit a very specific brand that we're trying to play, and immediately would lose value if this brand goes out the window. So let's say DJ Smith gets fired. We bring in a new coach that has a new mentality. All of a sudden, Tyler Boucher does not fit this brand. And now we've used a 10th overall selection, a very valuable asset, on a player that fits our system right now. So if we continue with this, if this is the direction that Ottawa goes long-term, it's a great fit at 10th overall. And I totally get, there's a lot more that goes on at the draft table and in the league than we would like to think so on Twitter. It's everyone's like, oh, we'll just trade down to get them. It's it's not that easy. You can't just trade down. I remember Trent Mann coming out and saying they knew that Boucher was gone by 16. So they tried to trade down a bit. If it's not there, absolutely take your guy at 10. We'll not argue that. If he's your guy, take him at 10. But like I said, any sort of slight change to this core, this group, or the mentality that they have right now, and now you're playing again. Now you've drafted a guy that has not much value around the league as a trade piece or as just a fit with the organization. So it's a risky game, but I can appreciate it. I think the idea is there, and I respect the fact that they are hard set on playing this style and will add people that help to play with that. So it's on brand. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we came around to is, you know what, this fits what they're trying to do. And I've said it a bunch of times, the Sens are zigging when everyone else is zagging, right? They've got their idea in mind. And hey, I'd rather you stick to your guns and fail that way than trying to be something you're not and just trying to copy everyone else and you fail that way, right? So if they're going to go this way, then go this way. And I think once you let the idea that he was picked 10th overall and you stop looking at the guys they passed on and that were picked right after him, if you just let all that go, you can be comfortable with this pick, like you were saying. So now my question to you, Jacob, is you talked about value there. So which of the Sens draft picks did you feel was the best value at where that player was selected in this draft?
So the guy that I think is not just the most valuable pick, but also could be the best player out of this draft is Zach Ostapchuk. I watched him notoriously throughout the OH or the WHL season. So I'm also an OHL scout, so I get those terms. It's all the CHL, but I watched the stat check a lot, and I was actually in contact with Joel Henderson. I don't know if you know him on Twitter, just a former colleague of mine at Dobber, and Joel's was our WHL guy, and I was asking him about him, and the stat check fits exactly the style that Ottawa wants to play, just with more speed and more offensive upside than Boucher. So you take a little bit of the notorious physicality out and add a lot of the actual playmaking, play driving ability, and that's what you're getting out of a Stapchuk. I think he's an unbelievable player. I was watching him in the WHL. There's a couple highlights you can see. I added one in my article of him just going end to end, destroying a defenseman and ripping it, ripping it around the goalie. So he has a ton of skill to offer. I think he could be like one of those low key ones that, again, his point totals won't blow you away. They didn't do a ton in the WHL last year, but this is an opportunity for him to have a huge breakout year. And he's 6'3", and he skates like incredibly well. So that in itself is a good asset to grab at 37, a tall player who plays physical with some offensive upside. The value there makes a ton of sense. Outside of the first round, I don't really care about what like the consensus board is, because that's when the value kind of it just take the guys that fit in your organization, because you're not passing on other like massive offensive skill guys. Like, I guess Aturati was still available. Like there's a couple of guys that were available, but I totally respect taking your guy, and a Stapchuk fit exactly with what Ottawa is trying to do. Now with that, just with more of that offensive upside than what Boucher has. So I love the Stapchuk pick. As soon as I saw that one, I'm like, this is a Senator. This is a guy that's going, in my opinion, has the potential to play inside of our top 6 in the future with that. So right behind Tkachuk on that second line, if he was to play with Pinto and probably an insert right winger here that we acquire, because I'm thinking Batherson's going to be up with Norris and Tkachuk there. So slot him in right behind. Even Timmy could play up the middle. I've heard rumors, like there's rumblings of that. We'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, a Stapchuk has a ton of potential. The big flaw in his game right now is the consistency. He does a lot of the hard things well and the easy things not so well. So his passing ability is still like kind of hit or miss. So there's lots of room for growth in his game. But again, we don't draft players for what they are now. We draft them for what they can be. And a Stapchuk has incredibly high potential.
To that point as well, what was it, 12 picks later or whatnot? And you said you covered the OHL, a guy who's put on 35 pounds since he last played a game in the OHL, Ben Roger. I'm not going to ask you to break down his game because, again, it's been so long since he last stepped on the ice. But going into next season, what kind of role do you think he'll play on the London Knights?
Ben Roger is a fun one. These were the kind of picks that I was anticipating happening too, especially out of a team like Ottawa, where like physical attributes tend to play a bit of a larger role with us. So we've, as an organization, or as just a hockey community, we've barely seen this guy play, especially at the OHL level. I watched him a bit in London. I'm from the London area, so I grew up a Knights fan, so I was able to watch it. I love everything that they do in that organization. So he's definitely in good hands. Obviously, we've seen Formanton come to the ranks. They did a good job with him. So I definitely, he's more of like your stable, calming presence on the back line, kind of similar to what Tyler Clevin did at UND this past year. A little bit more of just a defensive, stable guy. Now Clevin did show some pretty cool moments there of offensive flair that people did not think he had in him, but the Ben Roger is probably going to end up being more of your defensive defenseman, classic guy. Never takes or doesn't take a lot of risk, but also is very, very reliable at the back from what I saw. And yeah, put on 35 pounds. This guy could be a completely different player from what I remember. Like when you look up his highlights, or even I remember watching him one game when I was watching Strangers and Evangelista, and he just looked like this really like tall, lanky defenseman that, again, was good, decent puck mover, played very limited minutes on that team. And just like, yeah, that guy could be a fun guy to watch in his draft year. And then obviously everything shut down, so we didn't actually end up watching him. But he was fun to watch. And now I'm really looking forward to seeing how he takes that next step under Dale Hunter. But I'm thinking he's going to play in that top 4, if not more. And I'd even like to see him get a bit of power play time, because I did noticed his passing ability before, and I think he could quarterback a decent power play in the OHL. We'll see what ends up happening, but again, that's a pick where it's a wild card. He could have gotten, like, he put on 35 pounds, but in terms of on ice talent, he could be the same. He could be like way better. He could be like, it could be anywhere, but that's the fun in the 2021 draft. We don't know a lot of the players past the second round, where it's just going to be a mess.
Are the London Knights supposed to be, as they typically are, one of the class teams in the OHL this year?
Bit of a retool for them. They'll still be good. Though they won't be a fantastic team this year. There's a couple other ones that I've got my eye on. There's a couple players that I already can imagine in an Ottawa Senators jersey come the 2022 draft.
Nice.
They're watching, but
hit us with a name.
I got, so his name's Gavin Hayes. He's from Flint, so he plays for the Firebirds. He's brother of Avery Hayes, so he's draft eligible this past year from Hamilton. Didn't get drafted. I like Avery Hayes, but it's a mystery. Great guys go undrafted all the time. So
yeah, like Parker Kelly.
Yeah, but Gavin is exactly what Ottawa plays, like, except fast. He's a quick hockey player, but so assertive. If you watch his games in the Hoinka Gretzky, he played on the first line there. And he's skilled, but he is always just a physical specimen on the ice. Like, you come in his area, he will knock you right to the ice, and then he'll go. Like, he'll turn the puck over and he's gone. I see him more as a complimentary player right now. Like, he still has a lot of, like, the play driving ability to improve on. Like, his passing ability is still hit or miss, but he's got a good shot. He's always looking to get involved offensively, and then he's super physical. So I'm like, this is an Ottawa Senator already. Like, this is exactly it. So I think he's going to have a high draft stock. I think he's going to be a first rounder this upcoming year. So depending on where we finish, he's could be wearing the red and black come 2022.
Yeah, well, that sounds exciting. But Jacob, if I know anything about the Ottawa Senators, if you think and hope they're going to select a player, they likely will not. So I hate to rain on your parade here, but that might not happen. I'm excited to watch some OHL hockey as well. We've got a couple Sens prospects. We're going to be looking in Hamilton. Chandler Romeo is a guy that's going to be there. Levi Marilainen in Kingston, and then Ben Roger, like we mentioned, in London. So it's going to be a good year for the OHL to bounce back. Now, a final question for me. Thanks so much for joining us and giving us some of your time here. It's been a great chat. Just a general question. If the Sens remain the way they are right now, no major off-season changes other than re-signing their RFAs, where do you anticipate them finishing the season? Like, what's your expectations if the roster stands pat here?
I'm cautiously optimistic about the season this year. We are in a very tough division. So I think that playoffs are still a bit out of reach, just because, like, Tampa Bay, Boston, Florida, Toronto are all there. Florida's my dark horse team this year. I think
they're good.
Yeah, they're a very good team. So our division's tough. We will not be in the bottom. I think just the way that they play, we're going to be able to steal games. We're always able to steal games off the Leafs. Like, we'll go at least 50-50 with them. Like, that's never a concern. Like, we'll grab games off of people. I think we'll be competitive this year, especially, like, throughout the league. We'll be competitive. It'll be nice to play teams outside of the North as well. And we haven't seen Ottawa play a team from America since, what was it, March 12th when we
LA
played
Kings,
2020. Yeah, the Kings is the last game we've seen. So it'll be nice to see how we stack up against the entire league with that. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I think people are going to improve on our team too. Like, I'm looking for a big year out of Brady Tkachuk. Tim Stützle, I'm hoping avoids the sophomore slump. But I think he's become more, like, he's a little bit more used to the North American game. You could see by the end of the season, he was way more comfortable than he was at the beginning of the season. So Timmy could have a breakout year, which would be fantastic. And then guys like Norris, Batherson, like, they're all going to get a little bit better with that. So I'm anticipating improvement. I think a lot of it will have to do with what happens in net. Like, we saw it last year. The main reason why we went on our 11-1 start was because our goaltending was horrendous. So if our goaltending is able to get sorted out, they're able to keep us in games. I think we'll be able to have a good season. I still think it's Matt Murray's net to start the year, and then we'll see what happens between Forsberg and what do we call him? The Philly Fanatic? Is that what you called him last episode?
Philly franchise.
Philly franchise. That's it. Philly Fanatic's the man.
Anything but Gus the Bus. No, Gus the Bus.
You don't like
Gus the Bus.
No,
Oh, Gus the
no.
Bus? Okay.
Yeah, we were canceling that one.
Yeah.
All right, Philly franchise. I can get behind it.
There
I'll
we
take
go.
that. But yeah, I think between the two of them, even Sogard, if he's in the AHL, maybe he hops up for a couple games. So if we can settle the goaltending, I think it's going to be a competitive team this year with some push to them. If we end up finishing just outside the playoff race, that's so be it. We're not at our peak yet. We're not supposed to be up there yet, but yeah, I'm thinking that should be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to your coverage with Dobber Prospects. You can go follow Jacob on Twitter at Jacob M. Barker 12. Jacob, thanks a lot for joining us today. We'll have to do this again once the season gets going.
No, it's my pleasure. I'll help on whatever you guys want.
All right, Pillsy, let's drive on over to the final segment. And if your car's not working great, we know just the spot to get you ready to be back on the road. It's rockauto.com. Rockauto.com is a family business, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. That is a seal of longevity well before their time. They have everything from engine control modules to brake parts, to tail lamps, to motor oil. You can even get your new carpet there. And when you go to rockauto.com, you'll be amazed at the catalog. It's unique and remarkably easy to navigate, where you can quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brands, specifications, and prices you prefer. Let's hold on that last part for a bit. The prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low, and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? It might be a rhetorical question, but it's true. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. All we ask is that you put Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way, they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you.
And guys, it's Friday. We made it to the weekend. So why not fuel your weekend and get the most out of it? Get outside, do some outdoor activities, get some exercise going. And if you're going to do that, you want to make sure you're fueled up properly. And the best way to do that is with Built Bar protein bars. They're the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, but we have another new exciting flavor from the Built Bar catalog. And you might be thinking, there's already so many amazing flavors. How are they coming up with more? Well, the crew at Built Bar, they always got something good cooking up in the lab. And this is one that I feel like is one of the most underrated flavors and nuts ever used. No one uses them enough. Ross, I love pistachios. We got a pistachio Built Bar coming through for you guys. So you're going to get great flavor and you're going to get great protein. Only 160 calories, 17 grams of protein. You get that nice roasted goodness of pistachios in your protein bar. So if you want to give these a try, head to BuiltBar.com today and use promo code LOCKED15. We're hooking you guys up with the promo code because we want you to get a chance to try these delicious protein bars for a little bit of a less price. And you can do that by going to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order. Go try a pistachio Built Bar protein bar today. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
All right, Pillsy, we are now 3 years past the 2018 NHL draft. And that's when I think is the earliest that you can start looking back and saying, where should player A, B, C have gone? Now, Scott Wheeler put out his with The Athletic. And as much as we like to, have some fun with where Scott Wheeler evaluates players and how he sees the Sens prospects, I do agree with how he sorted this out. Now, he's got Quinn Hughes going first. Does that surprise you at all? He was 7th in the draft.
Not a massive surprise, just because if we're looking at kind of the draft class here, Quinn Hughes has made probably the biggest mark and had the most impressive steps into the NHL, considering his position as a defenseman as well, right? Like Quinn Hughes, you could definitely argue has had a better start to his NHL career than Rasmus Dahlin. Now, he was also put in a much better position to succeed than Dahlin, but the attributes on the ice are there regardless. So I think Quinn Hughes going first overall makes a lot of sense here.
So second on his list, now I just got to pull it up here. I dropped it for 2 seconds. Svechnikov
Stays the same. Yep.
stays the same, and he's a great player. He's
Oh, yeah.
awesome. And
he's the guy Carolina needs, so that fit works as well.
I mentioned it during the interview with Jacob, but it seems like there's a report out of Russia that he's signing for 8 years at around 8.5, give or take. So I wonder how that sets the tone for Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, that's an interesting contract. If that's where
it is,
yeah. If that's where it is, then I think Brady probably comes around right under there. Like, I don't know if he could justify getting the same dollar amount as Svechnikov, but definitely in that area. Like, I would say, yeah, an 8x8 for Brady based on that would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, 8x8 would be a fantastic contract. I would love that from a Sens
awesome.
point of view. And then he's got Rasmus Dahlin slipping down to number 3. And that seems like the lowest that he would go. Therefore, leaving Brady Tkachuk staying at number 4 in its redraft. Now, he did have Brady at 8 going into his pre-draft rankings, right behind Evan Bouchard, who falls a little bit lower here. But all in all, I think 4 is a pretty fair spot for him.
Yeah, unbiased, I like Brady Tkachuk at the number 4 spot in that draft. Yeah, it works out great.
And for the rest of the list, just a couple notable ones. Everyone talked about Jesperi Kotkaniemi going a pick before him. In his redraft, Scott's got him going 10th behind a few other guys. And then he's got Philip Zadina at 11. So those were fallers. Meanwhile, Brady Tkachuk rising, considering where Wheeler had him, but staying exactly where he went in the draft. Now, the only other part of this for the Sens is Jacob Bernard-Docker, who went 26th in this initial draft. He's not even given an honorable mention spot in the top 35. Did that surprise you?
A little bit, but also you have to consider, like, JBD hasn't had and I don't know every single guy's progression on this list, but he hasn't really had the chance to shine at a high competition level. Like, he's been at UND. He only got a couple NHL games in, where some of these guys have played NHL games, AHL games. So I think that gives them a little bit more of a light there. But I think, you know what, it's fair that maybe JBD didn't make this list, but that doesn't undermine what I think JBD can do and what he can project to. Like, maybe he doesn't shine as much as some of the other prospects already, but he's a calm and steady guy. Like, I think there's not going to be a lot of hype and highlight videos around him, but what he does is all the little things right, and that ends up in sum of all of his parts, it's going to turn him into a really good defensive prospect.
And one who's going to complement the offensive side of the Sens decor, which he doesn't have to be. If he's a 20-point guy year in, year out, that's all good, as long as he's got great gap control and can clear the front of the net as he gets stronger and stronger. So I'm not too worried about where he's got these guys ranked, but it is good off-season banter to get back and forth to. Pills, you think we're going to have a signing to discuss by Monday?
I want to say yeah, but I don't think so. Like, there's no timeline shift, or there's no deadlines that would create any pressure to get a deal done, right? So I don't think so. This isn't the time yet. I think once September comes around, then kind of every day we can start being like, all right, now there's only X amount of days till camp, so something should happen soon. But I think we're still in vacation mode. Like you said, I think a lot of these GMs are on vacation. The agents are on vacation. The guys are, the NHL players are on vacation. So I don't think the pressure is really on right now.
Well, we'll find out by Monday. One thing we do know, Monday, we're going to start our organizational value rankings. We've been teasing it for a while. We had a lot of fun doing it last year. And just going through, you see the turnover year after year. I put out the list of guys we ranked last year, but who are gone this year. There's got to be at least 20 of the 64 guys at least. So it'll be fun to get back into those rankings, see what the movement is. We're going to do plus and minus, the change, where they were in 2020 versus now going into 2021. So stay tuned for all that. We'll also have our Sens Central Citizen. But for today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.